Hey people, it's Nias talking. This is another Black Heroes video, and the source I'm using is Harlem World magazine. So this is about Victor Hugo Green, the author of the Green Book. Let's go. Victor Hugo Green, November 9th, 1892 to 1960, was a Harlem, New York postal employee and civic leader. He developed and wrote what became known as the Green Book, a travel guide for African Americans in the United States. The book was popular at a time when their choices of lodging, restaurants, and even gas stations were restricted in many places, including outside the South. It was first published as a Negro Motorist Green Book and later as a Negro Traveler's Green Book. The books were published from 1936 to 1966. Green reviewed hotels and restaurants that did business with African Americans during the time of Jim Crow laws and racial segregation in the United States. He printed 15,000 copies each year. In the 1930s, Green began his work by compiling data on stores in the New York area that accepted black travelers and published his first guide in 1936. Similar guides had been published for Jewish travelers who sometimes faced discrimination. Green's guide was so... Sorry folks, a bit tired. Green's guide was so popular that he immediately began to expand his coverage the next year to offer other U.S. destinations, adding hotel and restaurants as well. After returning from the Postal Service, Green continued to work on updating issues of the Green Book. In addition, he developed the related travel agency business he established in 1947. Victor Hugo Green, named for the noted French author, he was born November 9th, 1892 in New York City, the eldest of three children of William H. and Alice A. Green. His family moved and he grew up in suburban Hackensack, New Jersey. Starting in 1913, he worked in Bergen County, New Jersey as a postal carrier for the U.S. Postal Service. 1918, Green married Alma Duke, 1889-1978 of Richmond, Virginia. She came to New York as part of the Great Migration from the South to northern cities in the early 20th century. After their marriage, the couple moved to Harlem, New York, which was attracting blacks from across the country. It developed as a center of black arts and culture in the period of the Harlem Renaissance. They lived in an apartment at 58T St. Nicholas Avenue. As African Americans began to own automobiles and take part in the developing American car culture, they were restricted by racial segregation in the United States. State laws in the South required separate facilities for African Americans, and many motels and restaurants in northern states also excluded them. For the Negro traveler, whether on business or pleasure, there was always trouble finding suitable accommodation in hotels and guest houses where he would be welcomed. In 1936, and not forgetting sundown towns. In 1936, Green thought of doing something about this. He thought of a listing as comprehensive as possible of all first-class hotels through the United States that catered to Negroes. He collected information on hotels, restaurants, and gas stations that served African Americans for his first edition of the Negro Motorist Green Book. Since some towns did not have any hotels or motels that would accept African American guests, he listed tourist homes where owners would rent rooms to travelers. His first edition had data for facilities only in the New York metropolitan area. In his introduction, Green wrote, "There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published. This is when we as a race will have equal rights and privileges in the United States." Green created a publishing office in Harlem to support his guide. In 1947, he established a vacation reservation service, a travel agency to book reservations at black-owned establishments. By 1949, the guide included his international destinations in Bermuda, Mexico, and Canada. It listed places for food, lodging, and gas stations. In 1952, Green changed the name to the Negro Traveler's Green Book. His travel agency office was located at 200 West 135th Street in Harlem, New York. Green printed 15,000 copies of each year of Green Book, marketing them to white as well as black-owned businesses to demonstrate the growing affluence of African Americans. At the time, Esso franchised gas stations to African Americans when some other gas companies did not. The Esso stations became very popular sales outlets for the book. Similar guides had been published for Jewish travelers in some areas. Although Green died in 1960, publication continued with his widow Alma serving as editor in 1966, until 1966. Passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and legal end to racial segregation in public facilities marked the beginning of the guide's obsolescence. The goal that Green had described in his introduction to the first edition of his work. Look out for a documentary about Mr. Green being produced titled Green Book Chronicled by Calvin Alexander Ramsey and Becky Weibel Serials. The California African American Museum in Los Angeles will also hold a public discussion in April, I don't know when this was, about the memories and memorabilia associated with the Green Book travel. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, scheduled to open in the fall of 2016, will display a tattered copy of a Green Book from 1941 that it bought for about $22,500 at Swan Auction Galleries in Manhattan. Okay, so this was before 2016. Well, hope you've enjoyed this. Please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. And while what he did may not be seen as something as interesting as fighting battles or something, I think that this is something heroic. It must not have been easy to have gone around and find all these locations and possibly risk his safety to do it. And not only that, once the book was published, how many lives were saved because people could move from place to place safely without fear of being lynched because they happened to walk into the wrong restaurant or the wrong hotel and meet the wrong person. So anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.